Hey, good morning to everybody out there. This is Jamy Bechler, and welcome to the Success is a Choice Podcasting Network for our talent and strategy show made possible by our friends over at Affinity Recruiting and Consulting. Check them out at affinitytoday.com. And as usual, we're joined by our co-host, Ruston Pierce. Good morning to you, Ruston.
Hey, how are you, Jamie?
Doing well, doing well. And our very, very special guest today is Brittney Ezell. Brittney is a former Division I head coach at the NCAA level. She's also a team leader for Keller Williams, and she's the executive vice president for Elite Entertainment Experiences. Coach.
Hey, I'll
Brittney,
take it.
welcome to
Hi,
the
guys.
show.
Good morning.
Do people call you coach still?
To somebody, I'll always be coach, and that's fine. That's fine. I get coach, I get doctor, I get Brittney, and coach is great. Doctor's just so my brothers write it on my Christmas cards. I don't really care. Brittney's fine.
That's right. You are a doctorate. You went through extra schooling. You got more learned. How was that process of getting your doctorate?
So I got my doctorate in the midst of coaching at the Division I level, and you know how painful that can be. So it was a lot of late nights and early mornings, but I have a doctorate in global sport leadership. I did 2 studies abroad, and just really happy holding an EDD.
Well, bless your heart. That is crazy. I cannot fathom that. I was always looking forward to getting out of school, but
yeah.
Well done. Well, we kind of threw out just a couple bullet points, but give us kind of a 30,000 foot view of what you've done in your career and where you are right now.
Yeah, so 30,000 foot view, 2 sport athlete at the University of Alabama. Never set out to be a coach. It found me. And so it turned more into a calling than anything. I thought I was going to be an attorney, and at times I still felt like that. But coached for 23 years, junior college, Division II, Division I. Along the way, picked up a couple different degrees, some certifications, and made some really cool connections all over the world. So that's been great. Transitioned out of coaching 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, into this role at Keller Williams. I'm the CEO team leader in Johnson City. I oversee about 160 agents and a leadership team. And then I'm the director of relationships for Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment nationwide. And what we do is help relocate athletes, celebrities, entertainers, coaches, C-suite executives all over the country and educate them about all things real estate. So long story short, my verbs are the same, guys. My nouns are just different. That's it. I do the same stuff.
So, Brittney, I'm curious, coming out of the pandemic, a lot of people started making transitions in jobs and roles. You made a pretty significant career pivot going from college basketball to everything you're doing now. I'm curious, what were the feelings and emotions that you had to deal with in making the decision to make that pivot? And what advice would you give for somebody who's listening, who's trying to decide if they're going to shift careers?
Oh, wow. It was hard. I went through the stages of grief, we as coaches, and you guys both know, you've coached at a high level, your identity gets wrapped up in your profession. And it took a lot of unraveling for me to get beyond that. But there's 2 kinds of coaches: the coaches that have been fired and the coaches that are going to get fired. And if you don't hit one of those categories, call me and I'll tell you which one's coming. It's it is what it is. We're the only profession in the world that signs up knowing you're going to get fired, right? But it's still heartbreaking because you've poured your entire existence into the betterment of someone else's children. So it was hard. So I took some time away and got to experience a really cool phenomenon called a weekend, which was fun. I never knew Saturdays and Sundays existed. That was awesome.
Didn't you go have to sit in a gym and watch bad high school players?
And listen to the commentary with all the coaches in the stands. That was always fun for me. But I took some time away. I started working with Elite Entertainment Experiences first. In partnership with a guy that I went to Alabama with. Dr. Corey Gibbs was a golfer at Alabama. So we've been friends for about, since we were 18 years old. And so I was able to do that from home, and it still connected the worlds that I liked. It was sports, it was entertainment, it was kind of staying involved. And then this position kind of sought me out. So honestly, Rustin, the best way I can describe what I went through is the rejection to redirection really opened my eyes to a protection. And I love the so I always stay with it. It's, in that protection was a lot of education and a lot of self-correction. So it was good. It was good. I realized a lot about myself. You realize real fast who your fans are, and more importantly, you realize who your friends are when you go through a shift. So it was painful, but that's where all the magic happens, right? Those pain points. It was good. It was good.
Well, Keller Williams kind of has this reputation for being a little bit different, a little bit better as a real estate company. What have you seen? What makes them a little bit different? What makes them a little bit better? Why'd you choose to become a team leader with them?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time researching it, Jamie. It had to align for me. Their culture is what makes them very different. And if you go through and you look at like their mission, beliefs, and values, it's very athleticized. It's success through others. It's open and honest communication. It's win-win or no deal. It's, nobody succeeds alone. I mean, it is really dependent upon a team. And that's where I do well. I was offered the job after I interviewed for 3 days, and I didn't answer him for 4 weeks. I went to their family reunion. I met with all the key players. In the process, I got my license because I wanted to understand. And, like you said, off air, I glutton for punishment. I like getting degrees and certifications. So I got that just to give kind of me a better understanding. But I like their culture. I like that they are a training institution. I like that they are a place where you can be yourself, and you've got people that'll support you no matter what. So everybody looks different in this space. They come from really, really vast backgrounds, much like when we were coaching. They come to you for different reasons, and your job is to take them places that, they dream about and make that possible. So it's been good. Been good.
Just to piggyback on Jamie's question, because I'm just curious about something you just said.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the creative or innovative things that Keller does that we may not be aware of? What were some of the things you noticed that stood out to you?
I think their commitment to technology always jumps off the page. Your own app. We've got a market center technology trainer in-house. I've got productivity coaches in-house. We do mega agent production classes. We do a little bit of everything. It's basically whatever you can envision as an agent. You let your leadership team know, and they're going to create curriculum for you. They're going to create you kind of a circle of influence or a board of advisors. And that's what's been really neat. And kind of finding my niche within Keller Williams Communities. They do everything from luxury to new home to land. I got my certification through DEI. I wanted to understand all the things that minorities went through when it came to real estate. That was important to me. Some of the advantages, disadvantages. I work with Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment. So, it's kind of finding your niche, and they do a great job of carving that out for people. They're really not a one size fits all. They are, what are you, what do you need? And let's create around it. So their mantra is the place where entrepreneurs come to thrive. And with that being the case, I can get both of you licensed within the next 48 hours. We can go ahead and get your paperwork done, guys. If y'all want to come over, I can take care of all of that. Just let me know. We'll do that. But technology and training, aside from the culture, I would say those are the two big competitive advantages that KW has.
So just shifting gears a little bit, because you are a team leader. So you're building teams in your organization. You're building teams around you. Just mentioned a lot of different roles that you all already provide. When you think about building teams, what are ways that you've found you've been successful with in how you build teams? How do you identify how to put people in the right spots? Do you have any processes that you go through to make sure you have the right people in the right seats on the bus?
Yeah. it's a pretty imperfect science. It really is. What I try to do is spend a ton of time listening throughout the day. I want my day to be dominated by listening. And I try to remind people that, you're your biggest problem and you're your only solution. All I can do is kind of open your eyes to what you might already know or what you're, willfully neglecting right now. But with building teams, the only abilities that I ever cared about, when you're in the athletic world, everybody wants them bigger, faster, stronger, jump higher, all those things. Yeah. But I always wanted dependability, accountability, responsibility. If you had those abilities, I could work with you all day. If you didn't have those abilities, that's where problems usually came in, regardless of your talent level. So I'm trying to listen as intently as I can. And I'm trying to make sure that the person's talent doesn't outweigh their character when I decide that we're going to be in business together. And
Yep.
I'm going to help them because what we do, in my opinion, is not just buying and selling houses. We're impacting families, and that matters. And so you want to make sure that they have the right temperament, the right why. And that's typically what I listen for. When their whys are very clear, their how is going to be easy. It is. Now it's the who, like you said, who can I surround you with that's going to tell you the truth, that's going to care about you, and is going to make you better. So that's how I spend most of my days.
Awesome.
Well, you had mentioned that your verbs have stayed the same, only your nouns have changed. I like that, but you're a coach. You've always been a coach. You're still coaching, just in a different way. Why is it important when you're coaching, to invest in people, to build up people, to make people better? You've talked about the people surrounding you. You've talked about building teams. You talked about coaching. All that put together, why is it important to invest in those people, and how are you doing that?
Yeah. It is so hard to sometimes kind of put in words all the things that I do or think about. I guess it's because you really can't build anything until you trust, and everything gets built at the speed of trust. We know that, right? So I don't trust you if you're not invested in me. I don't. I'm looking for more transformation than transaction. And that sounds so funny coming from a real estate office when there's so many transactions every day. But if the transformation takes precedence over the transaction, then things typically fall in the right order. When you get those confused is when now we really don't have a relationship. It's just you want something from me, I want something from you, and let's move on. And it's like I've always said, even when I coached, at the end of my life, nobody's going to ask me how much commission I made. No one's going to ask me how many games I won. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. And I assure you, when I answer for all the things of my life, those are not going to be on the list. So what people have to understand is the more that you can, not just buy in, but be there for somebody, be that one caring soul. And it makes a huge difference. It really does. I had people pour into me my entire life. And that's all I try to do. I'm still a point guard at heart, guys. I just chased assists all over the place. I just chase them. And if I trust you, I'm going to keep giving it to you. If I don't trust you, I'm going to find somebody else to finish. So we got to be in relationship for that to happen.
So how would you define leadership development, and what are some things that you do to develop the leaders around you or emerging leaders around you? What are some practical steps you take to do that?
Practical steps. Oh gosh. Leadership is lonely. You guys know that because not everybody wants to take responsibility. They don't.
Yeah.
Most people spend their life trying to shirk it and get away with as little as possible. If you're going to be a leader, my encouragement to you is get comfortable taking blame, okay? Because you're going to get blamed for things you didn't do and you couldn't control. And then be comfortable with not getting praise. That's okay. None of those things deter you from your path. When it goes back to, like we talked about, when your why's right, how do I train them? I give them responsibility and I get out of their way. And when they need me, I step in. And when they want feedback, I give it to them open and honestly. And when they make a mistake, I, applaud them for trying, because that's where people get really, I guess they kind of get in their own way, because they try something once and it doesn't work and they quit and they say, well, maybe it's not for me. Try it again. Like, what a terrible world it would have been if when we all first started walking, if that first time we fell down, we all just said, well, forget it. We're just going to crawl the rest of our life. So you got to crawl a little bit as a leader, you do, but eventually you're going to stand up and somebody's going to be there to hold your hand and get you going. And then ultimately you'll be able to do it on your own. But my job is to do what any good coach does. It's pat you on the back or kick you in the butt. That's what we're supposed to do. That's why the good Lord created us the way that we are. Can't pat our own backs or kick our own butts, and that's why God created coaches.
So I'm curious. Something you just said made me think of something else. So I spent a lot of years in education, and the most recent generation of kids coming up, Gen Z, which current students aren't in that anymore, but Gen Z starting to move into the workforce. And, something you just said about, failure. Gen Z, one of the major concerns about them was they were the generation of kids that if the game doesn't work, I just hit reset. And if I can't figure it out, I go try a different game. And I've watched that over the years with kids that I worked with and dealt with. And, as somebody who's actively hiring people, as somebody who's actively training people, what do you do about a young workforce that is walking in going, if I don't succeed at this, I'm just going to go try something else. Like I'm not going to wait around and figure out how to succeed. I'm just going to switch and go some other direction.
Sure. Oh gosh. You and my mother should have a lot of conversation. She was superintendent of a school system, and her biggest complaint was that parents didn't want their children to fail. They would catch them before they failed. And all you're doing is you're really not helping them. You're hamstringing them, because they don't understand resilience. They don't understand how to fight back.
Yeah.
So what I have to do very early in a lot of the listening that I try to do is get a good understanding of their mindset. And I like to ask about something they failed at. I want to be inquisitive about those things. And, it's difficult because, like you said, they just press reset, or I'll go try something else, and stick to itness is just not a thing anymore. It's not. But that doesn't mean it can't be. And it goes back to what Jamy asked, when you believe in people, I never wanted to let the people that believed in me down. That was why I worked as hard as I did. I thought it was disrespectful. And that was one thing that we Southerners were taught never to be, is don't be disrespectful to people that believe in you and have tried to lift you up and support you. I try to do that with our agents. I try to lift them up. I try to support them. I try to help them with their mindset. I try to get them out of their own way. But I hate hearing all the quiet quitting and blah, 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 blah. Quitting is quitting. And once you do it that first time, it is easy to do again and again and again. But so's winning. Once you do it, it's addictive. So, is it hard to start over? Yeah. Or is it hard to keep going? Yeah. Which hard path do you want to take? Do you want to keep starting over, or do you just want to stick to it and see what can come? I tell everybody that I am aggressively patient. I know that I have to be patient with a lot of things, but that doesn't mean I just sit and hope. Hope's not a strategy, So I try to be aggressively patient and especially with agents, I'm waiting on them to figure it out, but there's always that gentle nudge, moving them forward.
That aggressively patient concept resonates with me strongly. I am currently coaching my son's 11-year-old select baseball team.
Oh, gracious.
And I'm amazed at the things that I witness in parents and some of the comments that are made. Mm-hmm. And I had a parent a couple of weeks ago tell me I was the most patient person she had ever met. And in my mind, I'm thinking, no, I'm losing my mind. I'm just not talking. But I will be aggressively patient with your son, and we'll figure out all the things, that he needs. But it's hilarious that phrase resonates strongly.
I love it. It fits me. I have two phrases that really fit. That's one. And then the other one is kind of how I approach everything. My phrasing is, I like to attack my days with a joyous intensity. I do. I find a lot of enjoyment in being intense. I am just not a passive person by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't let things happen to me. I don't like not feeling like I'm happening to that thing. I'm happening. You're just along for the ride.
Yep.
So it's trying to live your life on purpose, trying to be intentional, and putting myself in proximity of other like-minded people. And that helps. And it does help to have a little bit of a sense of humor when you're being aggressively patient. Yeah. I never understood silence is golden until I started coaching, because good gracious alive, sometimes you just got to sit there and shake your head. It's a lot.
Oh yeah.
And say, bless your heart.
Bless your heart is right.
Bless your heart.
That's a good one.
Well, life is too short to make all the mistakes ourselves. I mean, we don't have enough time to make all the mistakes. And you had mentioned most coaches are born to be fired. So it's a two-part question. Give us a mistake or some mistakes you made in coaching, and a mistake or some mistakes you've made now in the business world, so that we don't have to make them.
Okay, I can do that. One of the first mistakes I ever made, my first year as a head coach, I was 28. And I was still a little bit a subscriber to the Pat Summitt Iron Fist, my way or the highway mentality. And the best way I know to tell you was through a story. I was coaching at a tournament in Miami, and I had a 6'5" international kid from Greece named Katerina Gliniadaki. And yes, I can spell it. And, I was very proud of myself. She was missing every bunny, every shot under the rim. It was driving me bonkers. We were ranked in the top 20. It was killing me. And I took her out of the game. I said, if you miss another 2-foot shot, I'm going to put you on a Greyhound and send you home. I can't stand this. She missed another one. I sat her out. We ended up winning by 25. Does that tell you where my brain was? It was completely in the wrong place. We go back to the hotel. I'm in my room, and I hear a knock on the door, and I look through the peephole and kind of look up, and there's 6'5" Katerina Gliniadaki bawling, crying. So I open the door, she comes in, and of course I make her sit down. So now I'm standing, she's sitting, and we're eye level, which is great. And she said, Coach, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful to you, but I didn't understand how far away 2 feet was from the basket. She said, we talk in meters. So it took me a second to be like, okay, I'm the biggest jerk ever. This kid has no idea what I was trying to say. She's in a foreign country. I'm not even speaking her language. And so that right there at 28 was probably the biggest lesson is, make sure that you understand who you're trying to coach before you try to coach them. How do they learn? How do they communicate? And are we speaking the same language? That was the big one right there. She went on to get her PhD from Cal Riverside and is doing great things, and probably not missing any more, 2-foot jumpers. But that crushed my soul at 28. In business, I think in business and in athletics, I would say this. I don't think everybody has the same outlook on team that I do. Some people will never grasp sacrificing for the greater good. And that is upsetting to me. That's where I feel like I really struggle. I'll come in early, I'll stay late, whatever I can do to help you. There just aren't that many people like that anymore. And so my philosophy has turned into, if I want them to be it, I got to make sure they see it. So I used to say that to my assistants. If I wanted our players to be a woman, they had to see a woman. And how do you handle things? And it has nothing to do with, how many baskets you make or how many transactions you've got this year. Who are you as a human being? And so those would be my two big failures. Those were hard. Those were hard. And getting fired. I mean, that's always hard, Jamie. I mean, everybody gets fired. It's fired.
I think it's always difficult dealing with international students. When I was coaching women's basketball, I also helped out with the men's recruiting.
Mhm.
And, we didn't think, that's the end of the sense. We just didn't think. We recruited 2 international post players and thought they came from the same region, so they probably would enjoy living together. Did not know that their 2 countries were actually at war, literal war. And we put them in the same dorm room. And day 1, they showed up at the office and we're like, I am not living with him. I want to kill him. And we're like, oh, well, practice is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's a whole different world. I've had limited experience comparatively with international kids, and they've all been good. But that moment really made me rethink my communicative style.
Oh, yeah.
And I still failed. And I'm sure there's people out there to this day that could point out every time I did. It was never for lack of wanting to get it right. Sometimes we just don't, we just don't get it right. And I regret some of those conversations and, times that I was hard when I should have been softer or more gentle, or times when I was gentle and I should have been, more demanding. But it's a imperfect science. Like I said, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
But it is a transferable skill that, when you think about just general leadership and having people that report to you, you better understand their context.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand the people around you's context, you're probably set up to fail at some point.
Yeah. And, the thing that always got me is people will fool you in the recruiting process. They'll fool you. And kids, I'm sure, say that about coaches. Oh, you were this way in the process, and then you got here and you were a jerk. Probably. You told me you were going to be in the gym all your off time, and I got to drive to the bar to get you out every Thursday night. Like, I get it. So you're absolutely right. It's really digging down and figuring people out and being vulnerable enough to let them figure you out a little bit too.
Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned Pat Summitt, and we have a lot of coaches that watch or listen to this show.
Mm-hmm.
You played in the SEC against her.
Mm-hmm.
You also coached in Tennessee. I'm assuming that at some point you coached against her, either in an exhibition game or a regular season game. Do you have a Pat Summitt story?
Oh, gosh. So I had the good fortune of knowing Coach since I was in middle school. I was teammates with her niece, Tracy Head. We played AAU together during the summers. And at the end of my recruitment in high school, I was at home in the pool. My mom comes outside and says, hey, you got a coach on the phone. I was like, oh, well, who is it? And she said, it's Coach Summitt. I fall off the raft, turn into Michael Phelps, like swam so fast to go pick up my Saved by the Bell Zach Morris phone, right? And she gets on the phone and she says, Brittney, I got one question for you. I said, sure, Coach, what's going on? She said, do you want to be a Lady Ball? I said, no, ma'am, I don't. And she started laughing and she said, you got your reasons? I said, well, at that time they had Michelle Marciniak and Tiffany Woosley, and, it was loaded at that spot. It made no sense for me. At 5'5", you got to make a lot of business decisions. You know what I mean? You got to make business decisions. But she was great. She just called to check in on me and talk. She said, there's going to be a little girl in Oregon that we're bringing in, Lori Milligan. Fantastic. And the thing that I'll tell you is my story is that she said, well, I'm probably going to coach against you, right? I said, yes, ma'am, probably. And she said, well, if you ever need anything, you call me, because we Tennessee girls stick together. I was 17, and I remembered that. And when I got my first head coaching job, I coached against her when I was an assistant at Alabama, of course. When I got my first head coaching job, she was one of the first phone calls I got. And she recruited some of my kids. And when I got the job at Belmont, she called. And, I stayed connected with Tyler, and Holly Warlick was fantastic to me. My entire career, she became a dear friend. Nikki Caldwell, Dean Lockwood, Carolyn Peck, her entire staff. And they didn't have to be. And so I always wanted to be that resource for anybody else because, like she said, we Tennessee girls have to stick together. It mattered. That's my favorite Pat story of all time.
Well, as we wrap up, love to hear from Ruston if he has any takeaways or any things that, his mind was percolating about some things that you said. And then Brittney will end up with you with some parting thoughts that you have for our audience.
So I think how genuine a person is stands out. It conveys. It's not something you have to say or try to prove. It's just obvious. And when Brittney said everything gets built at the speed of trust, it sounded so incredibly genuine. I knew that it was definitely who she is. And just some of the things she was saying throughout, it wasn't rehearsed. You could tell she had lived it out. She had gone through success and failure and understood how to handle both. And so that's probably what stood out to me was, if anybody's listening, I would just really encourage you that concept of everything gets built at the speed of trust is so incredibly important, but it also better be genuine trust. Because if it's not, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
Brittney, what about you?
Well, you always get uncomfortable when somebody talks about you like you're not here. I feel like the scene from Steel Magnolias, and don't talk about me like I'm not here. I appreciate that. I am definitely a work in progress. I am. And I try to learn something every day about leadership that I can give a little nugget to somebody that might help them. And everything I do, I try to base it on facts, but understanding feelings. And one of my favorite phrases is that the facts don't care about your feelings. They don't. But I can be mindful. I can try to deliver in a way that, speaks your language of sorts. I just wake up every day and just try to be better, and in some way, and better for somebody, but most importantly, just better for me. I want to push the limits of everything that I've been created to do and be, and how I want to impact. And it goes back to what we said earlier. I don't have to answer for my win-loss record. I don't have to answer for my GCI or anything in real estate. Did I exhaust myself trying to use all the gifts that I had with the platforms that I was given, whether I recognized they were platforms or not? And if I can do that, then I'll be fine. So yeah, that's about it.
Jamy, what takeaway did you have?
Well, I love the Pat Summitt thing. That I know that wasn't what this show was about, but anytime we can throw a Pat Summitt in there, I love that, because what Brittney said about that's just the way she is. Certainly my interactions with her as a small college coach in Tennessee wasn't the same as Brittney's, but I did have enough interactions with Coach Summitt to know that what Brittney said is absolutely spot on about Pat Summitt. And that, that plays to a bigger theme with leadership culture. Mm-hmm. She didn't build her program at Tennessee just because she had 5-star athletes. Obviously she had great players, but she built it because they believed in her. And when Brittney says that, the speed of trust, her players trusted her. Mm-hmm. They knew that was who she was. And so they would run through a wall for her. You listen to her alums. And I wish my players, there's some players that would say that they didn't trust me or they wouldn't run through a wall for me. When you listen to Pat Summitt's players say that, you start wanting to connect the dots. Why is that? Well, it's because they trusted her, because she was genuine and she was sincere.
Yep. She really was. She stacked wins every day, and it had nothing to do with basketball. She just stacked them. And I heard a great quote. Coach Michael Burton, he's a life coach in Nashville. He has a great phrase about what is success. It's just my memory of what is it? Confidence is a memory of my previous success. And I think about that a lot with her, because she had so much success and she didn't need to be validated. She was trying to validate you. Yeah. Always. And I love that, because we all, as coaches and players and leaders, we seek validation from invalid people. You know,
And
people.
it really didn't matter what level you were, like, and people outside the state of Tennessee don't really get this. Like, they knew Pat Summitt was a great coach, but they don't fully understand what you were saying about, well, you're a Tennessee girl. Like,
Mhm.
that extended to every high school coach in the entire state of Tennessee. Like, if
Mhm.
you were involved in any way with women's basketball in the state of Tennessee at any level, Pat Summitt was finding a way to get involved with you.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I used to marvel at, some of the places I would see her, and I'm like, how many hours are in a day?
Mhm.
But that's who she was. And, she used to make the statement that she loved Tennessee, and people outside would think she meant the university. She was talking about the entire state.
She was.
And that's just who she was.
Yeah. Pat, I think when it really got down to it, Pat loved people. Pat loved people. Pat knew that in order to be successful, it was with people, not through people, but with them. And I
Yeah.
always loved hearing her talk about it. And she spoke in these anecdotes that, you had to be from Tennessee sometimes to get.
Yeah.
But boy, when you really dug into them, you're like, that's deep stuff, dude. Like that. She was brilliant. She was kind. She was more interested in being significant than successful, but she was obviously wildly that, but people don't remember that. She was significant and still
Mhm.
is. Still is.
Well, we appreciate, Brittney, you joining us today, and we'll put your contact information or your website, BrittneyEzell.com, in the show notes. People can go there, check that out. We appreciate that. Appreciate your insights today. Thank you, Ruston, for joining us as well. And thank you to you, the audience, for watching this either live this morning on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, watching this on Rumble, listening to this on the Success is a Choice podcast. We appreciate that. If you would kindly smash or just tap that little like button or the thumbs up or subscribe, or just show a little bit of love to the show and to Brittney. Leave a comment, leave a rating and review if you'd be so kind. That'd be awesome. And until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?